Welcome back to J48 Ministries with Jonathan Pike and Will Bailey as we continue on Rapture Watch Signs.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, last week we left off with a very interesting topic where the timing right now is unbelievable. And I want to tie in some signs to that timing. Now, I'm basing all this off of 2020. I don't know when you will be listening to this. It may be 2021, 2022. It might be further in the future. But what has happened in 2020 has really had our Bibles just bing, 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 with just alarms and things going off saying, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming really soon. Now, last week I tied in how the timing with Israel, but I want to also include some of these signs. Some of the things that we are seeing here in 2020 that I believe has set the stage for Jesus to come back. Not saying last week that the return of Israel as a nation and that Israel is sitting there in their promised land that God said they would be, that Jesus said they would be, that this generation shall not pass until these things be fulfilled. All that is some more signs, but there's many, many more that our Bible gives us. And so I want to pick up right here. And I'm going to be in Matthew chapter 24 again, but I'm going to bounce over to Revelation some, and I'm even going to hit Genesis chapter 1 with one verse there too, with something that just recently happened. But one of the things I want to say right here in Matthew chapter 24 is the Bible tells us that Jesus is speaking once again here, and he says, in verse 6 of Matthew chapter 24, he says, "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Now, if you really want to go and just look at 2020 as a whole, y'all, we have set records all the way across the board. In storms, record hurricanes, record devastation, wildfires. It has been an unbelievable year for the weather, okay? And Jesus clearly told us that. And famines and pestilences, earthquakes, and diverse places. We are having things happen right now that's even baffling the scientists, although they are saying it's all part of global warming, that global warming is to blame for much of these problems. But I'm telling you right now, Jesus clearly tells us and warns us in His Word that these things will come to be. Now, according to scientists, per global warming, we were off by, I believe it was 2 degrees worldwide as a whole. All right, the world as a whole was 2 degrees hotter. Now, I'm just going to tell y'all, that is not enough to trigger what has happened in our world right now. This is an event that is on the scale of the plagues with Egypt. Now, those plagues, there was 10 plagues, and they varied from different things. That's what you're seeing right now on the level and on the scale of some of these events that are taking place. But then it goes on a little further right here. Jesus speaks. He says, verse 9, "Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity or sin shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." Now, you're seeing that on a worldwide scale, too. As a matter of fact, America is one of the only nations where you can still freely worship Jesus Christ without worrying about persecution. But even here in 2020, we saw some of that going by the wayside, too, with COVID. And the government telling us in many states that you are no longer allowed to gather in church. That it's not a, help me out, Will, what was they calling us? A priority business. I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but either way, yet liquor stores and many other things were allowed to be open, even to the point that the President of the United States got on national TV and made a briefing saying that all church and religious organizations are allowed to be open during this time. So even here in America, which is considered a Christian nation per se, and that has always been free per se, you saw the persecution of Christians for the first time in a very serious way. And many have waxed cold because of this. Many have feared, is this the end? A lot of things have happened. But then he goes on to say something else. He says, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Now, something very interesting has happened in the last several years, actually the last several decades. It's very interesting right here where Jesus said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. 2018, one of the greatest human beings to ever walk the face of the earth, in my opinion, passed away at the age of 99. Many of you knew him as Billy Graham. He had a ministry, and y'all, I'm going to tell you, these numbers are unbelievable. His ministry started, his crusades anyway, he was actually preaching a little before this, but his crusade started October 1947. All right, it was an estimated now. And this is estimated. We don't know the exact numbers, but it is estimated in 2007 that he preached in 185 countries and or territories, 417 crusades, reaching over 215 million people. 215 million people. Now, like I said, this is estimated. This number could be way higher. All right? But Jesus said that this gospel, verse 14, Matthew chapter 24, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. Now, I want to tell you something. In the history of the world, nobody has ever preached all over the world the gospel like Billy Graham did. Never in recorded history has anybody done what Billy Graham did. Not even Jesus did something on this scale. Jesus' ministry was primarily there in Israel. Many other preachers, great preachers of our time, did not expand the world like Billy Graham. There was nobody and has never been anybody like Billy Graham. But it's amazing to me how over 2,000 years ago, Jesus said this would happen. And take Billy Graham out of the equation now for a moment. Because of our current technology, we can preach a message right now, Facebook Live or live television, and it is broadcast or can be all over the world. Even in the most remote places in the world, you can put a satellite up and pick up channels anywhere in the world. It is amazing the technology that we now possess so that people can see, hear, and learn about the gospel. So not only did you have a man like Billy Graham during this time, and Jesus clearly said, this gospel shall be preached to the whole world as a witness, but it's happening every week because of our current technology and satellite television. Now, I will say this. Billy Graham took advantage of that. Billy was one of the first preachers to ever have a radio and TV ministry. As a matter of fact, me and Will was pulling up some of the numbers here. The phone lines that you could call in, staggering. What do you remember some of them numbers, Will? It's like 500 per place or something?
It was like 530 something per station, and they had 47 stations when he went online.
Yeah, see, I mean, y'all, these are unbelievable numbers.
2,000 volunteers.
This is a worldwide ministry. All right, that still goes on today. You can go on right now. You can go YouTube. You can go any other way outlet. Look them up, Google, and you can still watch Billy Graham Ministries sermons, however it may be. You can watch all kind of preachers. There's preachers all over the world. You can watch them right now. But there again, Jesus clearly said, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness. One other thing that's really neat about Billy Graham was a lot of times when he was in these other countries, and I've done it before too, and it's very challenging, but you preach with an interpreter. Many of Billy Graham's messages were overseas with an interpreter. But he would do something that is just mind-blowing even today. He would fill up stadiums and arenas beyond the capacity of any sport that was ever played in these places. What he did, the way God used Billy Graham was unbelievable. But once again, it fulfilled some of the prophecy that Jesus gave the disciples right here in Matthew 24. It was a sign. I believe it's a sign that is overlooked, but you should never overlook this sign because listen to me, it is real and it happened in our lifetime. Okay? So now here's something else that happens. He says later on in Revelation, John writes, he says in verse 9 about these two witnesses and that they're going to be killed by the Antichrist. Now, something that's really strange about this, you think, how in the world does this tie into 2020? How does this have anything to do with signs for 2020? Well, let me show you. In Revelation chapter 11, the beast is going to kill two witnesses, two godly men that are standing at the wall. All right? They will lay in the street, the Bible says, for 3 days. All right? 3 days. It says it right there in Revelation 11:11. 3 days they will lie in the street dead. All right? And in verse 9 and 10, this is where the prophecy comes in. This is where what's just so amazing kicks in that happened this year. It says, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. All right, so now here's what's happened. Two prophets laying in the street, and notice the wording right here. Every tongue, every kindred, every nation. And then it says right there in verse 10, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them. Now, how is that possible? That every tongue, every kindred, and every nation can see these two dead bodies laying in the streets. Well, you got a glimpse of that this year. We had a young man, or a man by the name of George Floyd, that was killed. And I'm not getting in on what happened in the details. That's not my intention right here. But nevertheless, it sparked a uprising. Okay, it sparked an uprising amongst people. And then here's what happened. And I didn't realize this at first, but here's what happened. It was not just here in America. Now, this incident happened in America, happened on an American soil, okay, in an American city. But here's what's interesting. The riots, the protests were worldwide, people. Listen to me. Worldwide. Every tongue, every kindred, every nation. All right. Now, I'm not getting into the whole George Floyd and what happened and who was right, who was wrong. That's not my point right here. My point is this. Listen to me. My point is the whole world was involved in this. Okay. All over the world, they were protesting. All right. So they're holding up signs all over the world about some guy over here in America. These people don't know this man. We have never heard of this man until this incident happened, okay? Nobody had heard of this man. But because of our current modern day technology, the whole world knew about this man within hours of this incident happened. And an uprising came from it. Now, Never in the history of the world could this have happened. All the way back to the Tower of Babel in Genesis, this was not possible. As a matter of fact, at the Tower of Babel, the Bible tells us that God took and separated everybody by language and spread them all over the world. So even if something would have happened in Europe, people in Asia wouldn't have known. If something would have happened over here in the Middle East, people in North America, South America, Central America would have never known because the technology were not there. Now here's something else that's happened. Christopher Columbus comes over here and discovers the New World. Suddenly worlds are connected for the first time in hundreds, thousand years. All right? But they still did not possess the technology to know everything that was going on. The people in South America didn't have a clue what Christopher Columbus was finding and selling. Many, many years later, all the rest of the New World had been discovered and was being conquered by conquistadors and everybody else. But the news was so far delayed, okay? Even all the way up to World War II. The news, people would die, wars would be won, battles would be won. And over here in America, many times families and friends and people wouldn't find out till many weeks later. As a matter of fact, Washington didn't know about Pearl Harbor until way after Pearl Harbor had happened. Because there again, the technology was not there. And not only did Washington not know, they were the first to know, but then the rest of America had to find out. If that kind of event happened right now today, as a matter of fact, this past week, Christmas Day, there was a bomb, an explosion that happened in Nashville, Tennessee. People all over the nation knew it the second it happened. Why? Because the technology, the social media that we now possess, and our phones, handheld, TVs, computers, unbelievable technology. And Jesus and the Bible was speaking of this all the way in the book of Revelation 2,000 years ago. The sign is this: we now possess the technology for a one world government. We now possess the technology for a one people, one kindred, one tongue, one nation. Y'all, I'm going to tell you something. It is unbelievable what is happening in this world right now and today. Now, I'm out of time, so I'm going to pick right back up right here, and we will keep going on this. Many more series to go. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. If you would like to know how to become a born-again child of God, or maybe you just need prayer, maybe you have something in your life and you just need prayer right now, please be sure to comment in the comments below, and we will be sure to get back to you. Thank you again for listening.
Well, everyone, that is the end of our podcast for today. If you enjoyed our podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe and the little bell to be notified when the new podcasts are released. If you'd like to give to our ministry, please go to worship@woodland.com/give, and in the comments, put podcast. If you'd like to mail us a check, you can mail it to 114 Bayview Drive, Phoenix City, Alabama, 36869.